Hey, so I hope that you can actually catch this that in every country, well, most of the Western countries in the world, what happens is this that all of their central banks are independent, and this independence is the most stock feature of any central bank in the world, independence. So actually, when the IMF tries to bail out a country, its first requirement is that the central bank be sovereign. So this is how they restructure a country's entire economy. This is how they restructure the financial system. But all of the central banks are governed by a central bank that no one seems to know about, called the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, which is the central bank of all central banks. And this central bank is the grand poobah of all central banks, and it regulates all of the other central banks. And what a central bank is supposed to do is to regulate commercial banks within the country. A central bank controls the currency, controls the money supply, and controls the interest rates in a country. So you see, currency and money supply are different things. So a currency is just a current or the purchasing power. So while they're controlling the currency, they have to control the inflation. So by controlling inflation, they need to target inflation and all of those things that they're supposed to do. So here is the issue that all central banks are supposed to be independent and free from political interference. And we'll just take America's central bank as the prime example, where we have a Reserve Bank governor and we have a president. So we see that every country has two main bodies or two legal persons that are in charge of everything that is happening, are in charge of governance. So we have a governor and we have a government. So the governor is a person who is the one who decides how the governments run. So to govern means to decide. So the governor decides, and the president presides, which means that he just oversees, an overseer, supervisor, sort of. So in essence, the first thing that you have to realize is that money is inseparable from law and legislature, and the government is also made by laws. So they're made by laws that are preserving them or are identifying the government itself as a legal person, and the central bank is also a legal person. So you have two entities. So these entities are organizations. So an organ is like a body organ. So this organ is organized into an organization. So it's like making an organism, a living organism. This is how it's organ. That's how it's organization. To immunization, something like you add a zionization to it. It's like you enact it, like an organization is actually creating Frankenstein. No, the monster, Frankenstein's monster. That is how he. That's an organization. You create this corporation. So this corporation is the actual state in every country. So every country is a person, a legal fictional person, and even a central bank is a legal person, a legal fictional person. So these are two people who are in the actual government. So these people preside in public. So they are what we call a government. Every country can be sued. Every country can sue another country. And the only reason why they're able to do that is because they're able to name them in a legal document as an actual individual person, an actual entity. So this is the legal status of a state. So a state has its own legal status. So when you look into a country in domestic policies or politics, what you see is that the country will have a central bank, or in some underdeveloped countries, the central bank will be part of the government organs. So this is when you see that the minister of finance is stronger than the governor. So this happens. But in developing countries, we'll talk about the US because that's the world currency, the de facto world currency. So in the US, we have the central bank governor, and Jerome Powell can never be fired by Trump. And here's the thing that he is, or in the future, whoever will be governor will be a person who basically makes their own decisions, basically has their own ideas, cannot be fired, has a longer term than an actual president, but is not even elected. But this person has more influence over your life, over my life, over everyone else's life than an actual overseer. The president just oversees, but the governor actually decides, says that, all right, we want to create a monetary policy that keeps our inflation at 5%. And this is what we're gonna do, and they do it. Like if they want inflation to be 10% for some odd reason, they'll actually do it. So this is why we'll see that in the bubbles that have happened, they've actually known that, all right, a bubble is happening, because it's pretty obvious when you know the reflexivity of these things that it's a bubble. So all of these things are like that, and they happen this way. So the way that it happens this way is so that a government can actually have a central bank as the lender of last resort. So whenever a government needs to be bailed out, it is not proper for a government to come to itself to borrow money from itself. So it needs to borrow from someone else. So this is why it's actually separated that way. But that creates other problems, paradoxes. But in essence, just the foundation of it is that when you need to borrow money, you need to go to someone else. You can't borrow money from yourself, right? So this is just a person, it's a legal person, and the person can't borrow money from themselves. So they have to go to a central bank. And also this happens in the whole financial system, that when money is being created, what happens is that the central bank creates the money, creates the currency and the interest rates. So all of these are charged to the government, and the government actually gives the money. Like, so it's like two people have a transaction. So the same thing happens that two entities or two legal people have a transaction. So this happens so that they can actually have a transaction. So to transcend, to transact. So it's just acting, acting. So it's just how they act it out, that the central bank will go to the treasurer, and they sell bonds. So it's a trade, transaction, trade. So they just sell the bonds to the person, and then they give them bonds, which is just a paper, a certificate, just like a receipt. They give them this paper, and then this paper is giving them entitlement to a certain amount of money, and then they give them a money supply. So this is how the money supply is actually governed and regulated, and that's how supply and demand happens. Because when a central bank, let's say, buys bonds from a treasury, it means that this treasury has just written a paper and just say that, all right, we're going to give you your money with interest. And then when they give them this paper, this bondage, they are able to create, they're able to get money, which is just given by this private institution, which is a central bank, independent and private. And it gives them the money, and then they get the money, and then this is how the money supply actually goes up. So this trade happens over and over again, and that's how the money is regulated, and that's how money comes into circulation, this cycle. So everything that is happening is based on this legal transaction, this legal trade, and how it actually comes about is because these are two legal entities and two people essentially, and this organization is how every government works and how the financial system actually works. So the central bank is a legal person and a country is a separate legal person. So a lot of people actually think that they are the same thing, even though they're within the same place. So these are actually two independent things, and they're only merged by the Congress, but they're not the same thing. So the governor, actually, in my opinion, is the person who runs a government, and a president just oversees it. And the real shots are always called by the person who is able to bring the capital in a capitalist society. So there is no capital without money. So in a capitalist country, such as whatever country, there's so many of them now. So in every capitalist country, the person who provides the capital is the person who is in charge. So that's just how it is, and that's how the the legal system of money works in essence.